My wife and I were excited for a weekend away from the hustle and bustle of the city. We found a picturesque lakeside cabin on Airbnb, and the description promised a perfect retreat with stunning views and the tranquility of a remote location. It was exactly what we needed to escape the daily stress. We arrived on Friday afternoon, and our first impression was charming. The cabin was a wooden mansion with large windows overlooking the lake. The interior was decorated in a rustic, cozy style, with a crackling fireplace that looked inviting. However, there was something slightly off from the start. There was an inexplicable chill in the air, even with the warmth of the fire. On the first day, we explored the area around the cabin. We discovered a trail that led through the woods to a small clearing. The place seemed magical, but there was something unsettling about the sense of isolation. When we returned, we noticed a series of strange marks in the snow that didn't look like footprints, but rather patterns as if something had been dragged there. We dismissed the thought and moved on. That night, as we were relaxing in the living room, we started hearing inexplicable noises coming from upstairs. The sound was like heavy, dragging footsteps, followed by a loud noise, as if something was being dragged across the floor. We decided to investigate, but going upstairs revealed only an empty room with no signs of anything being out of place. As the night progressed, the noises became more frequent and intense. We returned to the living room and tried to distract ourselves with a movie, but the feeling of being watched was inescapable. The windows began to fog up, and from certain angles, it seemed like shadows were moving outside. We went outside to check, but the area was deserted and silent. The next morning, things worsened. When we woke up, we noticed that the fireplace was cold, despite having been well fed the night before. The snow around the house looked different, with deeper and irregular marks, as if someone had walked around the house, but with heavy and awkward steps. We decided to head to the lake, thinking a change of scenery might help us relax. Upon reaching the lake, we found something even more disturbing. There was a wooden boat resting on the shore, but there were no signs that anyone had used it recently. The boat seemed to be in good condition, but there was an air of abandonment around it. Upon closer inspection, we saw wet fingerprints on the side of the boat, as if someone had tried to hold on to it. It was impossible that these had appeared recently, as the boat was dry and the area around it was intact. We decided to return to the cabin, and upon entering, a biting cold took over the environment. The temperature seemed to drop dramatically. In the middle of the night, the sense of unease was so strong that we couldn't sleep. What had once seemed like an idyllic escape now felt like a nightmare. By the end of our stay, we decided to leave early. When we informed the host about the strange events, he just smiled and said that the cabin had a rich history and that it was normal for some people to feel a peculiar energy. Although we tried to find an explanation, the lack of any logical reason for the events and the host's enigmatic behavior made everything even more disturbing. We returned to the city with the feeling that something was deeply wrong. We never managed to understand what really happened at that lakeside cabin. The marks in the snow, the unexplained noises, and the shadows that seemed to dance outside the windows continued to haunt us, leaving us with an unsettling sense that something was beyond our understanding. We decided to rent a cabin on Airbnb located in a mountainous region, seeking a peaceful getaway for the weekend. The description promised a spectacular view and a cozy atmosphere, perfect for relaxation. It was exactly the type of retreat we needed. We arrived at the cabin on Friday afternoon and were greeted by a charming house with a porch overlooking a stunning mountain view. The interior was comfortable and appeared well-maintained. There was a sense of isolation that was both reassuring and slightly unsettling, but we decided to embrace the environment. The first night passed without incident, But the next morning we started to notice something odd. The electricity in the cabin was intermittent. Lights flickered, and several outlets stopped working. We decided to take a hike along the trails around the cabin to distract ourselves from the technical issues. When we returned, the situation worsened. The electricity continued to fail, and the heating was not working correctly, making the environment cold and uncomfortable. We tried to contact the host, but he was unavailable by phone, and our message went unanswered. On Saturday night, the situation took a more serious turn. As we tried to settle in the dark, we heard a noise from outside, as if someone was trying to open the front door. The sound was subtle but constant. Using our phone lights, we checked around the house but found no one. The cabin was isolated, and it seemed futile to search in the dark. The tension escalated when, in the middle of the night, we were awakened by a louder noise, as if something was being dragged or moved. Again, we went outside to investigate, but the area around the cabin was deserted and silent. We decided it was best to lock all the doors and windows and wait for morning. When daylight finally arrived, the host still had not returned our calls. The power outages continued, and the situation was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Without a clear solution, we decided to explore the nearby area, hoping to find an explanation for the noises and the power issues. During our exploration, we discovered a small cabin near the main one, seemingly uninhabited. Inside, we found some tools and electrical equipment, as if someone had been attempting repairs. It was strange and suggested that the main cabin might be undergoing unannounced renovations or maintenance. When we returned to the main cabin, we found a note on the door from the host, apologizing for the inconveniences and explaining that there were unexpected technical issues with the electricity. He offered a partial refund, but the damage to our experience had already been done. Disheartened and concerned for our safety, we decided to leave the cabin and find a hotel in the nearby town. Upon arrival, we discovered that the area around the cabin was not exactly safe, with recent reports of attempted burglaries at isolated properties. This revelation only heightened our concern about what might have happened if we hadn't left in time. We returned home with a mixed feeling of relief and disappointment. The idea of a tranquil retreat had turned into a nightmare due to unforeseen problems and an increasing sense of insecurity. This experience served as a reminder that sometimes what appears to be an idyllic escape can conceal unexpected challenges. I've always enjoyed hosting people at my property on Airbnb. My countryside cabin, located in a serene and picturesque area, was the perfect place for anyone seeking a break from daily life. However, there was one particular stay that stood out as the most strange and unsettling experience I've ever had. It was an autumn weekend when I received a booking for the cabin from a group of 3 people. The reservation seemed normal, communication was polite, and their requirements were reasonable. They arrived on Friday night, and up to that point, everything was as expected. However, as soon as they arrived, something about their behavior made me uneasy. They were very reserved and seemed uninterested in exploring the surrounding areas, which was unusual since most guests were eager to enjoy the outdoors. Instead, they spent most of their time inside the cabin, and I noticed they were constantly locking all the doors and windows. This was not a common practice for visitors, who typically left the doors open to let in fresh air. On Saturday night, things took an even stranger turn. I received an alert from the monitoring system I have installed at the cabin, notifying me of unusual movement. When I checked the footage, I saw the guests moving erratically around the cabin. They appeared to be searching for something, opening and closing cabinets and drawers frantically. It looked like they were searching for something specific, but without much focus. At first, I thought it might be an overreaction, but the guests' behavior began to be genuinely disturbing. At 2 a.m., I received another alert from the system, this time accompanied by the sound of objects falling and muffled conversations. Curious and somewhat worried, I decided to visit the cabin to see what was happening. When I arrived, they were very nervous and insisted that everything was fine. But the power was completely off, which was unusual. They explained that the power system had failed and that they were trying to fix the problem. However, something was off about their behavior. They seemed uncomfortable and avoided direct eye contact. Additionally, they asked me to leave the property, which was extremely unusual for guests. The next day, when I went into the cabin to check for damages and possible maintenance issues, I found some things that alarmed me even more. There were strange marks on the walls, as if someone had tried to draw something with a sharp tool. Additionally, several items that were usually in their places had been moved or were out of order. The air inside the house felt heavy, and there was a sense that something was not right. I couldn't find a logical explanation for what I saw, and when I asked the guests about these details, they did not give a clear response. They seemed irritated and eager to leave, which made me even more uneasy. After they departed, I decided to conduct a more thorough inspection and discovered that the power system had indeed been damaged, possibly due to an overload, and some objects in the cabin were broken or misplaced. The experience left me with a feeling of discomfort and unease. Although the guests did not cause severe damage, they left behind a strange and inexplicable atmosphere. They never responded to my messages again, and upon further investigation, I found out that they had made several reservations at different locations, always for short periods. It was as if they were on some sort of mystery quest, but what they were truly searching for or doing remained a mystery I could never solve. Since then, I've taken more precautions when hosting new guests, including a more thorough background check and closer monitoring of the cabin. Sometimes, hosting can be full of surprises, and this particular experience reminded me that not all visitors are what they seem.